Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar, Accessibility and Your Online Store from Legal Risk to Opportunity for E-commerce Sellers. And I do want to introduce our speakers today. I'm Abby, a business development rep here at Accessibility and an e-commerce store owner myself, and we have Kelly Simoneau, disability rights attorney at Spinal Cord Injury Law Firm, and Krista White, director of e-commerce at Two Blind Brothers. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate it. So here's a bird's eye view of what we'll be covering today in the webinar. We'll go over a few things, starting off with what web accessibility is, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the cost of litigation, e-commerce lawsuits in 2024, Two Blind Brothers and their success story, the many benefits of an accessible website, and be sure to stick around until the end to see a live demo of our AI-powered solution called the Access Widget. Okay, so to kick things off, let's just start and say, accessibility equals inclusivity. Making your site accessible means welcoming a massive audience, with 28% of US adults and 16% of global people who live with disabilities. It's not just the right thing to do, it opens up exciting opportunities for growth, reach, impact, and we'll explore those in the coming slides. So what makes a website both accessible and compliant? I know some of you may be wondering exactly what that means, and Kelly is going to dive into the details of accessibility guidelines and compliance requirements.
Thanks so much, Abby, and thank you everyone for joining today. As Abby mentioned, my name is Kelly Simoneau. I'm a lawyer based in the Washington, D.C. area, and this issue is particularly important to me because I'm also a person with a disability. When I was 16 years old, I was in a car wreck and became paralyzed in that moment. I had to learn to rebuild my life as a person who uses a wheelchair. And what I came to learn very, very quickly in that process is that there was a world that really wasn't made and built for me as a person with a significant disability. The good part about that is that I was able to go on and go to law school and start my own law firm and ultimately be an advocate for the disability community. And the issue of web accessibility is so incredibly important because it's so relevant in all of our lives. And I'm so glad that you all have joined us today. So as a lawyer, I want to take a moment to kind of dive into what the laws around web accessibility are, how they apply to us as business owners on the web, and what you can do to reduce risk of potential litigation going forward. Let's start kind of going back to a time that, quite frankly, really predates the web as we know it today. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a very strong and powerful piece of legislation. It was passed in 1990, so we're looking at 35 years ago just next month. And this piece of federal legislation was to ensure that people with disabilities have access and rights as a person without a disability. So, back when in 1990, a lot of the things people were looking at were like some physical access, access to employment, communication. And really now, sitting here in 2025, the question is like, does it apply to websites? And there's been a lot of discussion around this particular topic, but I'm here to give you some answers. So let me just answer it fairly straightforward. And that is, yeah, it does. So while that original legislation predated the internet, the Department of Justice, the US government, came in and made an opinion to confirm that the ADA's requirements apply to all goods, all services, privileges, activities offered by public accommodation, including those that are offered on websites. But the reality is that if you just read the text of the ADA, like it doesn't get us to where we ultimately want to be when it comes to, legislation around accessibility in our digital space. And what I think is ultimately going to happen is there's going to be some additional legislation on the issue. We why do we think that? Well, because we've already seen it kind of creeping its way through Congress. Back in 2022, for example, the Website and Software Applications Accessibility Act was introduced in both chambers of Congress, in the Senate and the House of Representatives. And with the idea that it was really a piece of legislation to affirm that the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, prohibits discrimination against individuals when it comes to with disabilities, when it comes to websites, software apps, like apps on your phone, and other digital technologies. And while that particular piece of legislation did not go on to get passed and ultimately become a law as we know it, this is tracking, and it is a developing topic. But until we have that concrete piece of legislation, that doesn't mean we are not without guidance. There is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, sometimes known as the WCAG or WCAG. The WCAG is the guidelines that really shapes that compliance with the ADA, making sure that a person with a disability, a person who needs to use a screen reader, whatever that accommodation may be, those are those guidelines that it is set for. So there's very, very detailed criteria for web accessibility. It's been set out through the WCAG, and it's really recognized as that industry standard for ADA compliance. There's different levels of WCAG, and so there's always going to be a floor. We're always striving to have better, more accessibility, and more compliance under WCAG. Now, when it comes to operating a e-commerce site on the web, what I will tell you as a lawyer who really spends a lot of my time tracking trends, tracking litigation, tracking risk, is that we are seeing a very sharp increase in ADA digital accessibility lawsuits being brought. There's a table that is pictured on this slide that shows from 2018 to 2024 a 73% increase in lawsuits being filed. So, what does that mean? That means that if a person comes to a website and is unable to access it because it is not accessible for that person's, based on that person's disability, that website is not in compliance with the ADA, and a person can bring an action against that business because they are not providing access under the ADA. That can result in lawsuits, that can result in fines, that can result in other consequences that impact finances and, quite frankly, the reputation of a company. As a person with a disability myself, I understand that my community is very brand loyal. We become very loyal to companies that recognize that embracing access for all is important. And so, not only is it really the right thing to do, but I always tell people it's actually a very, very good business choice. So ultimately, if you're tracking trends, the trends are going to continue to rise. There are more eyes on this issue. There will be more litigation towards inaccessible websites. And, this particular webinar today is really focused on a certain group of people, and that's people running e-com websites. And this is a particularly important webinar to have because e-commerce is the #1 most targeted industry for ADA website accessibility lawsuits. That's because e-commerce websites are very transactional and really operate in the sphere of, many do not have a brick and mortar. Like this is their way that business is operating. And if a person comes on and is not able to have that access to complete a transaction, it makes you very susceptible to running a risk of a legal action against you. Um, you know, the e-commerce businesses, they face more accessibility related lawsuits than any other industry. Many times e-commerce businesses are eyes on scaling and growing, and there's a spot in their scaling that it just leaves the accessibility piece behind. And when they do, it really can open up to a lot more risk. Um, yeah, the 77% in 2024 last year, tracking all of the lawsuits filed on web accessibility issues. 77% of those were e-commerce websites. And that is a very strong number to show that this is a very strong need when operating an e-commerce business. And, I'm a business owner myself. I look at risk and cost. I'm evaluating those things every day myself. And, what I can tell you is that these risks do not come without significant cost. Businesses are paying a major price when they're operating their websites without accessibility in mind. There are very hard figures to support that. Just showing you on this screen is some figures that really add up very quickly. Um, you know, if your site is not compliant, if a person with a disability does not have a way to access it, then the next step may be to send a demand letter demanding that your website become compliant. And those, even in that process, there are costs involved. To have attorney's fees, you're ranging 5 to 15,000 on the person who's bringing it, 5,000 for your own defense. And a thing I try to remind people is at the end of the day, the outcome is going to be you remediating, auditing, and making your website accessible. It's just it'll be a lot more expensive on the back end than it would be if you are operating with accessibility in mind from the get-go. I mean, up to $40,000 for just not being proactive. That is not a good business choice. And it's also, not allowing yourself to have the opportunity of a very wide and large part of our population, which is the disability community.
And thank you so much for sharing, Kelly. That was very
Mhm.
insightful. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Krista from Two Blind Brothers, who's gonna share their success stories.
Hi, everyone. I'm Krista. I'm joining you from Two Blind Brothers. I'm currently located in New York. However, our team is pretty much all over the US. We started as a company 9 years ago by our co-founders, Brad and Brian Manning, who were both diagnosed as children with Stargardt's disease. Basically, what that means is they're losing their center vision over time. One day they both went shopping at Bloomingdale's and left with the same shirt, and they were wondering how could this happen, because they weren't focused on how the product looked. They realized they were focused on how the product felt, and they're like, there's something here. What can we do with that? They launched their own apparel company with the goal of donating 100% of our profits towards different blindness organizations. So through those 9 years, we've grown from apparel to accessories to stuffed animals and beyond. Moving our mission forward, we're focused on 3 main pillars: building awareness of the blind and visually impaired community, growing that community and helping them find resources, and helping our customers understand what technology and what products are out there to help them. We want to create an inclusive experience that goes everywhere from our products to our website to our marketing to the fact that all of our products we try to include tactile braille elements not just logos, but an actual functional piece on our product. And our goal really is to inspire everyone to not only through our mission of donating 100% of profits, but to shift your perspective from what is limiting you towards what you can do in trying something big and new. Since we've launched, we've donated over 1.7 million to blindness research and actually over 3 million to all of our different charities and blindness organizations. So working with accessibility for us was, I want to say, a no-brainer. They definitely have helped us in our website become and maintain compliance and have an easier experience for all of our users. I would say there's three main areas that really we saw success in. One, we are a small team, but we're hoping to have a big impact. There's about 6 of us on our team. So working with this accessibility, not only was it an easy onboarding, installing our widget, designing it to be exactly how we wanted to on our website. However, our monthly audits and all of the features that they have helped our team and me personally. I even have a fun fact from the beginning of this week. Typically month to month, we have our monthly wrap up of audits from Accessibility, and I have flying 100%, which is what we want to have. But I was flagged this month that something on our site did not pass the compliance we normally do. So I've realized with a small team, things can slip through the cracks. So we have to add and go in and fix some features. So I would definitely think that was a great thing for the team to give to me, so that me and my team can quickly fix that for our community. Because with people coming on our website, we have people from all over, and we want to make sure our users have a seamless experience. So since installing, we've had better key navigation, ease of use of actually finding the widget and being able to adjust our website as needed. And actually it has helped improve conversion rates, which as any e-commerce site, you want to grow. And of course we want to grow so we can donate more. And lastly, one of the other big areas of improvement for us was with our customer support. We've seen with the ease of use of the accessibility widget and some of the navigation adjustments, not only have we had less tickets written in with those specific topics, but also less phone calls and needing help navigating and shopping our site.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Krista. And that's a beautiful story. So now is your chance to see how your website stacks up when it comes to accessibility. So grab your phones and scan the QR code on the screen, and it's going to take you to our free tool called the Access Scan. And what this tool is going to do is going to quickly audit your website and let you know what fixes can be found and what can be helped so that we can make those websites compliant. So I'm going to give everyone a second. Okay, now that everyone has had a chance to get an audit of their website, and don't worry, we're also going to send over a link so that you can check it in the future. Let's break down what web accessibility can really mean for your e-commerce strategy, and not just as a risk avoidance, but as a powerful business growth tool. So there are many forms of benefits when it comes to accessibility for an e-commerce store. And like many of us here, I'm an e-commerce store owner myself. So is Kelly, and you know, Crystal works for Two Blind Brothers. One of the major risks that we often talk about, and which Kelly spoke about earlier, was reducing that legal exposure, especially as regulations become more tight and businesses face more lawsuits for non-compliance. So it's a smart move for protection and also peace of mind. Which brings me to my next point. I like to relate reaching new audiences to a physical store. So we have an e-commerce store, but I like to think of it as a brick and mortar. So would you rather open your store on a quiet street, or would you rather open it on a main road that has a lot of traffic? So making your website accessible is like moving to that main road. It opens your door to a much wider audience, including the $3 trillion spending power that's within the disability community, which I'll later speak about. So essentially, more customers equals more sales. Next, I'm going to speak about having an accessible e-commerce store shows that your brand values inclusivity. As Kelly spoke earlier, today's consumers are more conscious consumers where they really think about and care about where they're actually putting their money. So by creating an experience that welcomes everyone, including people with disabilities, you enhance your brand reputation and deepen long-term loyalties. Making your e-commerce store more accessible naturally optimizes the site performance, boosts organic traffic, and it also does wonders for your SEO. So making it easier for search engines to rank higher and drive more traffic, because search engines, a lot of people sometimes don't really understand what goes into it, but it favors clean, structured, and user-friendly website, which is what accessibility helps with. And I do know that cost is often a deciding factor when it comes to web accessibility. I get it, budgets, but it's worth knowing that businesses can receive up to a $5,000 tax credit for implementing web accessibility. So this often can cover the cost for a small to a medium-sized business. So we've discussed the benefits of having an accessible e-commerce store. Now let's talk numbers, and I'm talking big numbers. So the global disability community holds $8 trillion in disposable income, as I mentioned earlier. And when you include friends and family, that jumps to 13 trillion. Now that's a large market you don't want to miss. And on the flip side, businesses lose nearly $6.9 billion every year from inaccessible websites. So accessibility is a powerful revenue driver. It's smart, it's impactful, and it's also good for business. So now that we understand that inaccessible websites are missing out on major revenue potential, as people with disability just choose to purchase elsewhere. Now let's take a moment to look at what's really at stake. So a current stat states that 28% of shoppers with disabilities may abandon a purchase because of accessibility issues, which Krista did speak about earlier. Navigating a website and checking out becomes more seamless with an accessible website, which I'll also demonstrate later. Consumers with disabilities shop online nearly twice as often as the average consumer. So with this in mind, 73.4% of websites that implemented an accessibility solution saw an increase in that organic traffic. And customers want to support brands that align with their values, as we've been talking about this entire webinar. So inclusion is a big one. And with 2 out of 3 Americans saying their social values impact their buying decision, when you make your site accessible, you're building trust and loyalty with a wider audience. So if we take a look at this, we see that we have a few different CMS platforms, and I want to let everyone know that Accessibility seamlessly integrates with these major platforms where most e-commerce sites are usually built on. It's a plug-and-play solution, it's fast to install, and it offers an easy way to get started. So our solution also scans the website every 24 hours, looking for those updates and fixes that it can help with, as Krista also mentioned earlier, that slip through the cracks. So if you're curious and you want to feel free to try out, we do offer a free trial. So no worries, you can test it out, see how you like it, and just see how amazing this solution is. So, and if you're looking for more confidence, as you can see towards the bottom, we have raving reviews on G2, Google, Trustpilot, and more. So our reviews really speak for themselves. So here are some of what our users have to say about us, as we can take a quick look. Quick and easy and effective, the best app for e-commerce accessibility, and peace of mind for compliance. And that goes without saying, as I was speaking about earlier, our reviews really show how impactful accessibility can be. All right, awesome. Now I want to introduce everyone to our featured product called the Access Widget. And within the Access Widget, you can ensure that your website meets compliance standards for inclusivity while also reducing potential legal risk. So what I'm going to do is bring up our demo site. And as we can take a look, we see that this is your typical e-commerce website, which most people have visited before. And a telltale sign that a website is utilizing Accessibility is by the blue icon on the bottom left of the screen. When you click into the blue icon, we do have preset profiles that we have designed with the disability community, such as Seizure Safe profile. And this profile enables epileptic and seizure-prone users to browse safely by eliminating the risk of seizures that result from flashing or blinking animations and risky color combinations. We also have vision impaired profile, ADHD friendly profile, cognitive disability profile, keyboard navigation, motor impaired, blind users, and screen users. So those are just some of our preset profiles, but I do want to let everyone know that you can also manually adjust to your liking. So we have content adjustment where you can scale to enlarge or decrease different sizes on the screen. We also have color adjustment where you can dark or lighten the contrast or the saturation to your liking. And we also have orientation adjustment where you can do read and mask so that it can focus, or you can have a big cursor so that you can pay attention to what you're looking at on the screen. So I do want to scroll back up and get into the legal element of the access widget. I'm going to click into this accessibility statement. So within this accessibility statement, what it's allowing the user to understand is what accessibility is doing on the front end and back end of the website to help make it compliant. And I do want to let everyone know that sometimes website owners may have this as a standalone page on their website so that anyone can access it. But if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. It does live here within the access widget as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn off the access widget because I want to share how impactful the accessibility access widget solution is. So typically, someone who may be motor impaired or someone who is using the keyboard to navigate, when they come to an e-commerce website like this, what they'll start to do is tab through. So I want you guys to pay attention. I'm tabbing through, I'm over different elements and links, but this living room tab that has the arrow pointing down, I want you to see what happens. As you can see, we skipped right over that. We were not able to see the drop-down menu and the other options. And as we continue, we missed the sign up, we missed favorites, we missed the shopping cart, which is super important. And it just keeps going until the end of the page. So this website isn't as functional as it can be. So what I'm going to do now is turn on accessibility access widget. Then I'm going to start tabbing again to begin with. And as you can see, we're going over those elements again. But now when we get to living room, we're able to access those individual pages. So if someone wants to get to one of these pages, they're now able to access that, which they couldn't have before. And most importantly, we're able to get to that shopping cart so that someone is able to check out seamlessly without a huge problem. So that's just a quick overview of our Access widget solution. And if you want an in-depth demo, be sure to stick around and reach out to any one of us, and we'll actually be happy to give you a full demo of everything within the Access widget. So let's go back to the webinar. Okay. All right, so now I also want to mention that for larger businesses and high traffic sites, Accessibility offers advanced tools beyond our standard plug and play solution because web accessibility is more than a checkbox, it's a full business strategy. So we've recently launched our new package called Manual Testing and Custom Remediation, an ideal solution for content heavy sites with PDFs, videos, and multimedia. So not only do you get the access widget for your website, we now are providing additional accessibility services along with litigation support package and a $15,000 pledge. So this ensures that as you continue your accessibility journey, not only do you feel supported, but you have access to everything your website potentially needs. And now that we've explored accessibility and how it impacts your e-commerce online store, let's dive into some questions and get ready for our exciting giveaway. So make sure you stay tuned until the end. So let's get into some questions. Okay, seems like we have a couple. So it looks like Linda asks, does the size of my website matter? Kelly, do you want to take that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the very short answer to that is no company is exempt. There have been cases brought against companies of all sizes, of all size platforms. There's been numerous notable ADA lawsuits that have been brought virtually every type of company. And so if you're present on the web, there is a risk.
That makes perfect sense. So let's see. We have another question, and this question is from Grace. Grace asks, can you use Access Widget on multiple platforms and devices? And is there a limit to how many accounts or websites are allowed? I'll take this one. So the Access Widget operates where your website does, essentially. So if you're on a desktop or a mobile website, Chrome or Edge, there is no limit to how many accounts or websites are allowed for the Access Widget. All right, and we have another question. George. George asks, what are the costs of a fine in case of a lawsuit? Kelly.
Well, yeah, I mean, these kinds of questions clearly vary very widely by the case at hand. There's many factors that goes into what can make a particular case cost a certain amount of money. But as we discussed earlier today, I think it's important to note that these are never inexpensive situations. You are going to be dealing with being on the hook for paying attorney's fees, not just yours, but for the plaintiff, who has brought the case forward. There may be fines associated with what you've done. There might be, damages that are allowed under a particular law, federal or state level. And then ultimately, you're going to have to pay to have your website become accessible. So these are never inexpensive, and legal fees can add up very, very quickly.
I agree. All right, so we have a final question. This one is from Tom. So it says, will Access Widget slow down my website or affect the regular UI UX at all? This is a common question that I receive that we get here at Accessibility. It's always, how does it affect the website? So I guess this is more of an SEO question. So firstly, the quick answer is no, Access Widget won't slow down your website or negatively impact the UI or the UX. In fact, as I spoke earlier, it boosts your SEO on your website. And a recent study from SEMrush and accessibilitychecker.org says that website found, as I spoke earlier, 73.4%. So an increase in that organic traffic. So it actually helps you. So making accessibility improvements, on average, websites experience about a 12% traffic boost after implementing these updates. So going with an accessible website is going to positively impact your website all around. Okay, and that brings us to the end. And before we end, I do want to mention that we do have a big gift for someone in the webinar, and it's a blind box from Two Blind Brothers, and we will send over the winner via email tomorrow. And that's it for today. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. And I do want to thank Kelly, of course. It's always a pleasure. And Krista, thank you so much for sharing that impactful insight and wins of having an accessible e-commerce website. And thank you. And everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Anyone else have anything to say?
No, it's been great.
Nope.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, guys.